few weeks ago, there was an awful ambush attack on 2 Los Angeles sheriff deputies in Los Angeles. They were in a patrol vehicle when an individual approached the car and shot both of them in the head. Miraculously, both of them have survived and are recovering at home, and a suspect has finally been arrested. Now, there were a lot of people speculating about who the suspect was or what motivated this attack, but it appears to just be a criminal, and authorities haven't said anything specific about a motive. The suspect is a 36-year-old by the name of Deontay Lee Murray, who had actually previously committed a crime and was arrested and charged with connection to a carjacking in Linwood, California. Now, the LA sheriff, Alex Villanueva, said in a press conference that this cowardly ambush was followed by bystanders celebrating and cheering that the deputies had been shot, and that followed at the hospital. Let me also be clear about something. There were a few people doing that, but it was not a crowd. It was like 4 or 5 people. What they were doing was disgusting, but that was in no way representative of any type of movement or any way connected to the protesters. If you watch the videos, it's 4 or 5 people being unbelievably ridiculous. And so to focus on that, I think is irresponsible, especially given the fact that the suspect appears to have no connection to Black Lives Matter. Anyway, Villanueva continues to say the quiet sanctity of the hospital, with protesters cheering and chanting for the deputies to die. These acts and that day, I will not forget it. And it represents the worst in humanity, and it shocked the whole nation. And that evening, I said, we will find this man, and I can report today we have found our suspect. So how did they find him? Well, the suspect had done a carjacking prior to the ambush attack against the 2 sheriff deputies. Through surveillance video, they were able to identify that vehicle. Luckily, he had already been arrested for that carjacking, and so they were able to get him not only for the carjacking, but also they tied that vehicle to the previous carjacking and were able to also get him on charges of what he allegedly did to these 2 sheriff deputies. Kurt Wegener, who is heading the investigation, said this about a possible motive. Sheriff's Homicide Bureau Captain Kent Wegener, who detailed the investigation, did not suggest a specific motive for the attack other than the fact that he obviously hates policemen and he wants them dead. Cenk.
Okay, so why did the sheriff bother mentioning the 4 rando protesters at the hospital?
We know.
Okay, I'll tell you why. It's because when the shooting first happened, he came out and demagogued and said, "Oh my God, this is at the hands of the people who were leading protests against police," and he blamed a huge amount of people, including LeBron James, for the shooting of the policeman. So now it turns out, oops, the shooting had nothing to do with protesters or Black Lives Matter or Antifa or George Floyd or anything else. This guy has a giant criminal track record, guns and crimes left and right, wild, out of control guy. By the way, I'm thrilled that they caught him. He not only because of justice, those are 2 human beings that he shot. It's an outrage. But he was also a maniac, totally out of control, loaded up with weapons. And so I'm glad he's off the street. And I'm glad they did their job well in this case in catching him. But has no political connection whatsoever. So in order to not be embarrassed after calling out people like LeBron James, the sheriff comes out and is like, "Oh yeah, I mean, so the guy's like a random criminal. But anyways, remember the 3 or 4 guys that showed up at the hospital? Okay, don't blame me. Just do your job. Just do your job and take credit for catching the guy, which is a great thing. And don't bother bringing back politics into it because you're embarrassed that you were totally wrong."
Well, I mean, look, in the state of California, there have been attacks on police that are politically motivated, but they're politically motivated by right-wing extremists like the Boogaloo Boys. Just this past summer, there was an ambush on cops in Northern California committed by Boogaloo Boys. And so we keep seeing these instances of right-wing individuals carrying out these acts of violence against law enforcement, but we never have any type of national reckoning about it. We don't have 24/7 media coverage on it. It gets covered by local news sources for maybe half a day, and then everyone moves on. And so when we keep hearing the demagoguing about Black Lives Matter, or allegedly these leftist groups who are carrying out acts of terror in this country, just know what the reality is and what the truth is. The police have been targeted violently by specific individuals who have right-wing ideologies.
Yeah, and by the way, Proud Boys who are apparently standing by, according to Donald Trump, ready to do violence after the election, who would they do violence against? Well, if Trump says, well, okay, I lost, but I don't want to lose, I'm not going to recognize the votes. Proud Boys, remember how I told you to stand by? Now go and do violence so that we can just keep this government by force. Well, they wouldn't be doing it to the left. At that point, the left isn't what's relevant. What's relevant is that Donald Trump has lost the election. Hence, the rest of the government apparatus would say, sir, you got to leave the building. So at that point, whether it's Boogaloos, Proud Boys, or any other far right-wing militia, they would be attacking cops and the military. And these are the guys who pretended to be offended because Colin Kaepernick took a knee. Meanwhile, they're currently plotting how to potentially kill police and military officers.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.